what's going on, and welcome to another episode of Believe That. We're not a good podcast, we're not a bad podcast, we're just the podcast for everything about WWE's most polarizing superstar, Roman Reigns. You're seeing 3 people if you're watching us on YouTube this week. That's one more than usual. Greg Monteith is waving. Hi, Greg. How's it going?
Great. How are you guys doing?
We're
Doing great.
Yeah, we're fantastic. If you're just listening to us, by the way, and we are available always on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, SoundCloud. You can watch us on YouTube as well. Betsy and I, we do this every week. Last week, we had ourselves a very pro Roman Reigns guest, Stat Guy Greg from the ESPN Cheap Heat podcast. Betsy was like, Mike, I know somebody who is not so much a Roman Reigns fan. How about we get him on? And I figured, yes, that's amazing. We'll have the other side of the coin. It'll be great. And this week, since Roman was again off of Raw, we figured what better time than now. So, Greg, thanks for coming on. And Betsy, why don't you introduce this heel that you've brought into our stable this week?
Yes. Unlike what's going on in politics nowadays, we're going to be bipartisan here at Believe That, so that we get both sides of the story, so that even though we're pro-Roman, we need to have the argument of maybe why we shouldn't be, or, so that we can get both kinds of listeners on here. And so we have brought on Greg Monteith, drummer extraordinaire, as well as, what can we call you, director of photography,
Filmmaker, whatever.
New puppy owner. So Greg wears a lot. Greg wears a lot of hats, but he is also a wrestling fan, in and out of it for years, and so we thought he would be a great addition to the podcast for today.
Quite the intro, Greg. You better live up to this this billing that Betsy's just given you.
It's very intimidating. I'll see what I can do.
So before we get into Roman specifically, I guess, Greg, let us know, your fandom. Betsy and I have talked over, past episodes, how she got into it a little bit later, a few years ago. I was into it really young, got out for a while, and then got back in a few years ago. Tell us your wrestling history, your fandom. Give us a little bit, before we get Roman specific, about you.
Well, I guess when I was like a teenager, like a lot of kids, they'd watch it on TV, and you sort of get into WWF or WCW or either one. I kind of got into both and was just I kind of just got it early, that it was a show, that it was fake, that it was, that it was a work. It wasn't as they called it, it wasn't a shoot. They weren't really trying to hurt each other. And
Betsy can't believe it. You shattered her kayfabe.
What? Oh, yeah, exactly. But then, I grew up on Long Island, so I was really close to the Garden and the Coliseum, and I started going to the shows at MSG. I was actually at the show the night that Andre the Giant died, and Howard Finkel announced it, and everyone was really, really sad, and it was really I remember being next to my dad and being like, oh wow, that's a huge deal. And then I started going to every house show and every Raw at the Garden for 5 years, all the way through high school and college. I'm on the network holding a Monteith 316 sign at the Garden. Oh no, at the Coliseum for a Monday night.
Really?
And I was like, I just want to check and see that it's on there and it's in its entirety. And I'm right on the ramp, when they used to have the big steel ramp, in the smaller arenas and stuff. And I'm just my sign is just over the ramp. This big Monteith 316 sign.
That's amazing. We need to go find that, Betsy, that episode number, and watch it immediately.
Right.
Yeah, it's at the end of December, 97 or something like that. It was the big Owen Hart, Bret Hart, the Canadian thing. But then I kind of got out of it in 2002 because they were just doing the same storylines over and over again. I think Kane and Six Pac were champions, tag team champions. And I was like, this is ridiculous. I'm getting out of here. So I just kind of stopped watching, completely cold turkey. There was also no competition once WCW went out of business.
Right.
So that was it. And ECW was folded. ECW was huge. That was a big deal. But then everyone else sort of went away, and they just sort of rested on their laurels. And no one was pushing the envelope anymore because there was nothing to push. So I kind of fell out of it. And then 11 years later, I started finding out that there were these podcasts out there, and was just sort of reminiscing about old times. It's the only bit of nostalgia that I really have gone into 100%. Everything else I feel is a cheap ploy to get people to spend their money. But this was all right, I'm all in on this. And I got really into it. And I went to a show with Betsy last year with patron saint of the podcast, Bobby Kruger.
Hey, Greg, you know the lingo. Way to jump in, because we got yelled at a couple of weeks ago for not mentioning Bobby. So good job ticking that box for us this week.
There you go.
Yeah, that was on my mind to say next in exactly
Good.
those words.
Good.
So well done.
Perfect. So there you go, Bobby. You're welcome.
Sure.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, the podcasting, that's what got me back into it too. I was listening to podcasts to get ready for shows, going to shows again, and it's great. So I'm happy that we're now part of that world. All right, let's talk Roman. So, Betsy, I think, Betsy, you and I will break down Raw specifically this week a little bit later once we
Right.
let Greg go. But you want to start the questioning on our witness here through the anti-Roman congregation?
Yes. I mean, major broad question. Why aren't you sold? What is it about him you don't like? Like, just rant. Go. Do.
All right, so like the number one thing, I knew it from the second I saw him, like the number one thing when I saw him was like, this guy is the most inauthentic person I've ever seen, right? If you were to take somebody that had a trading card and you just looked at a picture of them, you'd be like, this guy is a wrestler. And anybody that you showed it to, if they watched the product or not, would be like, oh, this guy, he's shiny, he has greasy hair, he's wearing some sort of sleeveless outfit.
That's the whole
Like,
resume.
he is a professional wrestler, right? But then you watch him move and talk, and you're just like, why is this company, or why specifically is Vince McMahon shoving this guy down our throat when everyone at all turns has been like, no, 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 and it's mind-blowing. It's just mind-blowing to me that this is still a thing when this much resistance has come across, that they're still like 100% all in, no course correction whatsoever. It's just mind-blowing to me. It really is, and it bothers me. It just bothers me a lot.
So.
Well, I can understand the generic aspect of like the all black, the flak vest and the long greasy hair, like very sure, they haven't really tapped in as far as character goes to his heritage like they have with the Usos, or like with Rikishi and even with The Rock and stuff like that. They access the heritage a lot, where they haven't as much yet with Roman, which I think is probably coming further down the line at some point. But you really don't think he has like the moves and stuff to back it up? Like, no, you're not a fan of the Superman punch or his spear?
I do not think he has, to quote, the moves and stuff that you said. I think, I don't know. But again, like, so this is my perspective, right? Of coming from a 90s, early 2000s fan where the product was slower. The development was slower. You had less shows. There was more anticipation because you couldn't just get whatever you wanted whenever you wanted it, right? Like you can maybe get access to the dirt sheets or whatever and like subscribe to like a newsletter that turned into like an online thing. So you got it a little quicker than getting it in the mail. But like, I don't want to see Bray Wyatt on Twitter having dinner with his family. Like, I enjoy the separation of these guys are fake and these guys are real. Like, I don't mind if there's a movie star or a TV personality that is on there because they're not selling it as if this is real, right? The only difference with wrestling is that they're pretending to hit each other and we have to like suspend disbelief that they're not. Whereas I'm trying to think of a parallel between like a love story on a sitcom or something. But like, I wouldn't think those people are really in love. It's just something to occupy me for 22 minutes or whatever. So I have a problem with his matches are just the same every time, right? He sort of comes out with a head of steam. He gets beat on for a little bit. He makes a mistake. The heel works him over. And then at the end, we sort of get the three things that he does. He signals the Superman punch or the spear with the Ouya or whatever he does. And then, sometimes he misses it. Sometimes he hits it. A lot of false finishes. And then that's it. And it's just the same match over and over and over again. And it's really, when you come from a Bret Hart, from a Shawn Michaels, from when you come from that era, that's like, it's hard to take this new product from someone that has been out for so long. It's just a wholly different beast, really.
Well,
That's a fair assessment, I'd say.
All fair, but assessments that could also be thrown across much of the roster, because I don't think that's Roman specific. I think it's a lot of WWE booking is kind of what you just described. So do you feel that Roman is maybe getting unjustly too much of your hate, Greg, when really a lot of people are victims to this?
I understand that, but a lot of people didn't headline WrestleMania 3 times in a row, and even though they were like, that's enough, like, okay, but we can move on from this, right? Like, I'm not saying Chris Jericho's a main event guy or whatever, but like, AJ Styles is clearly the best wrestler, like, in my opinion, or the best performer. Maybe not the best talker, but he's getting there. But like, in the past, 10 years or so? And
he is
his first
phenomenal.
match, He is, and he loses to Jericho in his first WrestleMania. And I got to Betsy's late for that match, and I was like, really? AJ like lost clean to Jericho in his first WrestleMania. Anyway, that was before I knew that like Vince likes to make sure that people lose on their first match.
Nobody
to see how
from
they take
TNA
it.
is going over in their first WrestleMania match.
Exactly. But yeah, I mean, I think they have less time. I think they have more sponsors to cut to. I think they have more replays to cut to that are sponsored by whatever corporate person is doing that. So like they just have a lot less time to fill and a lot more vignettes. Like this, everything kind of starts with like a 20-minute sort of interview first, and they're really long. They're just really, really long. And I guess with a 3-hour show, you got to fill time, you know.
Well, and that's what Mike and I have talked about, like what makes I actually wind up enjoying SmackDown more than I enjoy Raw on the weekly now, because there's just more action during SmackDown because there's less time and there's still about the same amount of people on the roster. And so, you know, maybe because Raw is so saturated, because there is so much time to fill, you know, like they could stand to go back to it being 2 hours, because it was 2 hours when I started watching like 7 some years ago. Yeah. But one of the things I appreciated in your rant, it wasn't really a rant, but talking about how like you kind of stopped watching after Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, that kind of thing. And, you know, they were more along the lines of like AJ Styles or like CM Punk or Daniel Bryan, people who have just an arsenal of moves to choose from and are really, really good on the mic. And so I could understand, you know, well, I like Roman, and you're probably not going to sway me off of that. Like,
no.
I can understand why someone who has the background in wrestling that you have and liked the people that you like are underwhelmed with Roman Reigns. But I do agree with Mike that the whole, like, he has a certain set of moves, he comes in, gets hit for a while, makes a mistake. That's, that is like 3/4 of the WWE at this point.
Well, let me ask you this then, Greg, because to Betsy's point about and to your point too, if you're comparing Roman or the current style of matches and booking to the Bretts and the Shawns and those guys, I mean, when you look back, now I don't want to go back to the 80s and Hulk Hogan and his 4-move set because it was a different time, but even like Stone Cold, The Rock, two of the most popular wrestlers of all time, not huge arsenals either. I mean, Stone Cold basically came in, threw punches, Thez press, stomped the mud hole, stunner, lather, rinse, repeat week after week. Why does it work for him but not for someone like Roman for you?
Well, because the promo gets people over, right? Because if you're only going to listen to them talk, but if you're not into the physicality or whatever, and if you don't understand the psychology of how to put a wrestling match together and why this is important versus this isn't, or like they're not even really connecting when they're kicking, like if you're able to like take yourself out of the physicality, the promo is what's going to put you over. And I mean, there's arguably nobody more entertaining than it. Like my wife cannot stand any of this, does not understand it whatsoever. Like anytime I try to be like, I think this is the one that's going to like sell you on this whole deal, or whatever, she like is on her phone within 30 seconds and it's just like, yeah, no, it's great. So, but I think that if she would have seen
a dancer and an actress who could potentially be like, oh, but look at it from like a partnering perspective, and Karen was like, I don't care.
Yeah.
So
anyway, I
think
she's
a hard out. You're trying, but it's not working.
Really, really hard out. But I think that if she was watching it during that time, like she would have been won over by how fun that was. Like that whole audience interaction thing started with him. Now everybody has a big entrance where the crowd. I feel like, and that guy that gets you over. Like Nakamura's over. He's not the best wrestler really, but like his entrance is like super over. And who else has a big one? I guess Finn Balor has a good one too. But
yeah, whenever Finn Balor comes in, I'm at home literally being like,
doing the arms up, yeah.
Yeah, and that makes you want to buy a ticket and go to an event to be like one of the 13,000 people who's doing that thing, like in time with the late queue. Like that's really, really fun. But I mean, all that started with The Rock and Stone Cold. Like those guys were like Abbott and Costello, but then beat the crap out of each other, and it was great. They were wonderful.
Put that on a T-shirt. Abbott and Costello, but beat the crap out of each other. I like it.
Yeah. So, well, and I think we can both agree that Mike and I both agree, even though we both like Roman, like his promos just, they ain't it.
The longer he talks, the less interesting it gets.
Yeah.
But I think so. Is that basically the root cause for you, Greg? Is that you'd be okay with his limited moveset and whatever else if he could just speak better? Would that fix it for
Well,
you?
I mean, I just feel like he's just like the blandest of bland things ever. So then when he wrestles, I'm like, I don't really care because I don't really care what his storyline does. I guess that's what that comes down to, right? Like if you're able to talk, you're able to advance the storyline. And if you're not able to do that, then it's like, then I don't really care what you're doing in this match because then all I have to do is hear you talk to the next guy you're going to fight or the next big monster. And I don't know. I think the two of those in tandem really work really well. This List of Jericho thing has gotten me like way back on board.
You know what happens, Greg, to people who don't like Roman Reigns? You know what happens, Greg?
And you got to wait about 45 seconds.
Yeah.
I mean, just gold. That guy's just gold.
It'll just be said right before we wrap up your interview. That's when we'll bring it back in.
Right.
Okay.
We'll have to hold it, for 25
if we remember.
minutes.
You know what happens to people who hate Roman Reigns? They get put on.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. So how are I have two questions for you, Greg. You can choose in which order to answer them. Number one, is there anything you do like about Roman? And number two is what would you do to make him better? If I came to you, I'm Vince McMahon. I'm like, hey, we're having a Roman problem. He's just not getting over. People like you, we need to get on his side. So is there anything you do like already? And if not, what would you change to make you like him at all?
Well, I mean, like you guys talked about, and what I thought was happening too after WrestleMania and that whole 7-minute promo or whatever, where he just, I mean, that was like old school fan anticipation, sort of leading the charge, right? That was a really, really fun.
The Raw after
promo,
Mania
right?
You're talking about.
Yeah, the Raw after Mania, which is, I mean, I wish I could have been there. That would have been amazing. But like, I thought he was going to turn heel finally. I thought they were, the WWE is like half meta and half real, right? So they cater to the people who don't know what's going on behind the scenes, and then they also cater to people who do know behind the scenes. And I thought that they were going to be like, all right, this is what you guys have wanted for a while. So if you want to boo him, let's give you a reason to boo him, and then everyone's on board, right? I think he would be so over as a heel because people just want to boo him anyway. So that's what would make him better. But going right back into this Strowman thing where now he's getting stretchered and now he's like off TV for a couple of weeks so that he can do whatever, so they can build to the match that they're going to have, is just right back to where they started. And it's just so puzzling as to why it's just not fun anymore.
And frustrating. I think, Betsy, you and I can both agree that putting Roman back where he is now after that Raw at Mania, our podcast, we were so excited for what that was going to mean.
Yeah.
And it's meant nothing, which sucks.
Yeah.
And he's already beaten him once, clean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like, what's the point? Like, you can't bring in a monster and then he just goes over, like, I don't know, he just gets beat 1, 2, 3, like it was nothing. And I don't know, like that takes the steam out from under him. It really takes away the credibility because Spears can beat him. I mean, if Roman can beat him with a spear, it's like, I don't know. It's just really, really confusing. So unless what they're going to do is like have him beat him again, the crowd boos that like, you want to get like, oh, well, he won another match, whatever. And then he's like, fine, what do you guys want? And they try to reverse course and go back into this thing. I don't see it happening because I think
we keep hoping and we keep waiting. And I think every pay-per-view, the three of us and millions of others are like, well, he can still be heel if X, Y, and Z happens. And we keep just holding the bag in disappointment. I just don't know if that's going to happen ever.
I don't think so. I don't know. I mean, they were talking about it with Cena a couple years ago, right? Like against Brock. And they were like, well, maybe they'll do something different and turn him heel. And then they never did. But
Well,
I don't know. I think that's the only thing that would freshen him up, really. I mean, to me, to somebody who doesn't watch week to week necessarily, but like is very familiar with the business and the sport. So that's what I think.
I don't think either of us disagree with that at all. Like, we both wanted him to turn like mega heel on that Raw after Mania. But, the WWE also likes to like really hold out on giving the crowd what they want, especially when they want it so badly, because it was the same with Daniel Bryan. When he was coming up, people wanted him to win for maybe even years before he actually won at Mania. And so that's why, like, when he won at Mania, I cried because I was like, oh, it's about time, because he's the underdog. And so, like, maybe they're really holding out and been like, oh yeah, we're not going to turn him heel after Raw when everyone or after Mania when everybody expects it. We're, like, maybe they'll hold off and they'll do it next year. I just worry that if that's what they do, people just won't care anymore because it was such a perfect time after Mania.
Yeah, no, I think it was great. It just, I don't know. I don't really know what else you could do. I mean, I feel like they've tried so many different things, and I don't know. I mean, it worked. I mean, clearly here's two people that love the guy, but I don't know. I mean, clearly when you watch
that,
the show,
Greg.
believe that. I know, but when you watch the show, like, and you watch the pay-per-views, I mean, people are clearly against this guy.
They are.
Oh,
and
It's just
it's interesting because to me, like the way I view Roman, it's almost like, and I'm single. I don't even have a girlfriend, let alone a child. But envision a father who has this like talented son who's just not applying himself in school, and like you want to see him do better, and you love him, but you know there's still more, and you're hoping for that A+ on the report card, and just hoping it comes one of these days. That's kind of how I feel about Roman. Like I love the guy, but I do admit there are a lot of deficiencies that do still need to be fixed.
Well, honestly, I was watching some episode of Total Divas the other day, and they were kind of focusing on Lana, and they put a clip in there of like Lana face planting into her wedding cake because Roman sidestepped
I was
her.
at that Raw. It was in Anaheim when I was living in San Diego. I was there for that one. Yeah,
like he was having his facial reactions were far more animated than what's going on now. So it's one of those things too that it's like, because the Undertaker is who the Undertaker is, he doesn't speak a lot. When he does speak, he speaks slowly and clearly. But like Roman is actually kind of better when he's opposite of a character. Like Rusev is a character.
mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And like that whole thing, like giving, like watching him laugh as Lana face plants into a wedding cake. Like as a woman, I'm a little like, really? Like, we're really going to do that right now? But then at the same time, like watching it after we've seen kind of, Roman not have good promos against anybody, I'm like, well, at this point, I'd rather him be laughing at a woman face planting a cake.
You should go back and watch wrestling from the 90s if you want to see women portrayed somewhat badly.
Misogyny at its height.
I mean, it was a different time.
like even people we love and cherish, like Stone Cold, just stunning women like left and right, as if it's cool to just throw your finishing move on a girl whenever you feel like. It was a different time.
Well, I caught parts of it when like Vicky Guerrero was still around, and like I think she got fired after some sort of like mud wrestling thing, and I was just like, oh man.
And that was on the bell curve on the way down from some of the stuff they were doing. Attitude era.
Can I just ask you a question, Betsy? Like, because I know you watch all the Total Divas, you watch all the Total Bellas and all that kind of stuff. Does the separation between character on TV and quote unquote real life person, does that take you out of watching Raw or watching their character? Are you able to separate, or would you rather it just be the person that you see on Raw and then have those characters developed outside? It's confusing to me.
Oh, I have zero issue with it. Like I love seeing the back scenes, or the backstage kind of stuff, like behind the scenes stuff. And although, Total Divas and Total Bellas is as real as WWE itself. So, none of it I really take seriously. And quite frankly, it helps me enjoy Raw and SmackDown, because sometimes there are people that I don't necessarily like in the ring, and then I'll watch them on the show, and then I'll kind of really start to like them as a person. And so then their choices in the ring wind up making more sense to me, and I wind up liking them more. So I wind up liking the whole deal more because I'm finding out who they are as people.
Sure. That's how I felt about The Miz, too, when he started doing better promos. I was like, oh, I like his matches now better because he's killing it. He had a great year last year.
So is the answer for Roman here to give us Total Reigns, where we just have a reality show following him around, and then that could win fans over? Anybody signing up for that?
So,
Anybody?
well, I don't know, because I hear he's like the nicest guy in the world, right? Like that's what I hear. I hear he's like just super sweet, super like the opposite of his character backstage, and they're trying to like write him as this character, and he's reading a script that he's not very good at doing. And I feel like, I don't know, I just wish they would give people bullet points from now on. I feel like Jericho gets bullet points. I feel like a lot of guys get bullet points.
Yeah.
But I feel like the younger guys are like, this is the system, this is how it goes. We only have so much time, so these are the words you're gonna say because this is what we're trying to sell. And I feel like he doesn't, I don't know, I just feel like he's not good at that at all.
Well, and that's something I think you've heard me say on the podcast as well too, is that like, it may even be Roman being like, I don't want to turn heel. I'm not going to be good at it. I'm not even, like he may very well be the person who's like, I'm not even good at being this bad. and you want to try and make me worse, but like I can't sell, like he may even know.
Yeah.
Like my personal take is that he might very well be so humble that he can't even go there arrogance wise to even be a good heel because he's a nice person.
Well,
but I don't know. I'm just making it up.
That's something we will ask him when he comes on the show one day, because I'm sure it's going to happen. The problem is that by the time he, I'm sure, puts in his 10, 12 years of service and has bullet point privileges like John Cena has now, by that point, will people care about him as much if he's burned up that goodwill between now and then? So we'll have to see how that unfolds.
Because also, when I first started watching, like, Daniel Bryan wasn't great on the mic. And then he started getting even better. But it was just one of those things that, he wasn't over until he was good on the mic. Whereas, they've pushed Roman so far and so far and so far that he really hasn't had to, like, develop the mic skills that other people had to in order to be taken seriously within the brand.
Yeah, it's a good point. When you have the machine pushing you from behind with Vince, yeah, you can have a little bit of retardation in your development on the microphone. And so far, not to his detriment, but certainly maybe it's been handicapping him from what he could possibly be.
Yeah.
All right, Greg. Well, we have our one big question that Betsy's going to ask you in a second that we asked Greg last week too. Stat Guy Greg. But first, I want to ask you, so how would you've mentioned in general, like turning Roman heel is kind of the way to freshen him up. But specifically, how would you book Roman? What would you do if you got him one-on-one in a room and said, hey, this is where we're going to take you the next 6 months to a year. This is what I suggest you do. This is what I think will make you a better character to the next level. This will get you over, Roman. What is it that you're telling him?
That's a really good question, because he's only going to deal with upper echelon guys, right? He's not going to go have a dumpster match with Kalisto or something.
Which I loved this week, by the way. Not to take anything away from that match.
But, I mean, so, like, once you get up to an upper echelon, you really don't work under it so much, which is, you're going to put Strowman up there. I don't know. I feel like if they're just going to keep going where he's going to be the new face of the brand, then they're only going to bring in big monsters for him to fight, right? So right now he's going to have to, like, get over this obstacle of Strowman. And then, I don't know. I mean, maybe they would have to, I don't know. I mean, I really want them to bring in, like, a really big baby face for him to fight. So then the audience would have to it would, I don't know, like maybe like a Nakamura or someone else that the fans are really, really behind, right? To get into a fight with Roman to try to, like, do the whole yard thing or something. I would do that to, like, work up to SummerSlam. And then I think that natural force might turn him heel. I don't know. I mean, they're going to put the belt on him? I don't know. There's so many. I don't really know. But at the end of the day, like, I also don't really care. And I think that ultimately is the selling point, right? Like, I care more what happens with the Jericho match or with The Miz or with AJ Styles. Like, I really want him to be the champ and run for, like, a year like CM Punk or something like that. So I think that would be really fun. He could really prove his worth. But I guess what it really comes down to is that I just don't really care enough about Reigns to even think that far ahead. Because he's probably just going to beat everybody that gets in his way. And that's boring.
Yeah, and he hasn't had a belt in a while. 2017 will not end without the Universal belt around Roman's waist at some point. So what feud, before we get to the Betsy question, what feud, Greg, if I give you anyone to put against Roman in like a 3-4 month program, what would get you to care? What would get you excited? What would pique your interest?
Oh, Brock Lesnar, for sure.
Which I think is pretty much guaranteed to happen this summer,
yeah,
I
I
would
think
imagine.
so too. That's probably going to be SummerSlam. And so here's the thing. You have to think about the buildings that you're booking ahead of time, right? So SummerSlam is going to be in New York, very hostile crowd, very anti-Roman, right? So if you want to get the best out of him, you're going to do something with him here that the fans are going to hate, right? So I think that's a good place to do that. And I think if he beats Brock Lesnar in Brooklyn,
the crowd will.
We're going to burn the building down. Like, it's going to be disastrous. So I think they know that ahead of time. So they're going to try to, like, poke the fire and, like, get the fans into an uproar to see, like, whether or not it's going to happen. But I think that's going to be I think that'll be the following feud. I don't know what they're going to do up until WrestleMania for next year, because I feel like NXT is going to have a lot of guys that play after SummerSlam that is really going to shape what next year's WrestleMania is going to be. I feel like they're a little thin right now, especially having some guys only on each show. So it's like a little anemic, and they're going to need these other guys to pop up and do their thing. So, like, maybe a Bobby Roode will come in. I don't know. But I think that we're on a collision course for Brock Lesnar for SummerSlam, and whoever wins, I mean, they're gonna burn that building down if you win. I swear to God.
Can't wait. Can't freaking wait. All right, Greg, we are going to let you go, but Betsy, fire away.
One last, and we're thinking that this is going to be the question that we ask our guests now, is that if Roman's career were over tomorrow, do you think that he would make the Hall of Fame, and why or why not?
If it was a true fan vote on the internet with no bots or anything to get into the Hall of Fame, I think it would be close, but he wouldn't get in. But since it's up to Vince McMahon, he's a first ballot Hall of Famer.
Already in, no questions asked.
Yeah, The time he was born, he's like, well, you're a descendant of The Rock. Well, then of course you're in.
I am waiting for the year when they just induct that entire family into the Hall of Fame as one unit. You know it's going to happen. But why not? You said if it was a strict fan vote, if it was a quote-unquote real Hall of Fame, that he wouldn't get in. What makes you say that?
Well, because I think that the boos are not that, like, he's over as a heel and it's fun to boo him. I think the boos are legitimate and they're like, get him off my television. And I think that the fans are annoyed, right? And so, like, you're not going to put somebody that you're annoyed with into the Hall of Fame.
Let me rephrase the question then. Let's assume that it's more like the Baseball Hall of Fame, where it's not fan vote, it's journalists, It's people who cover the industry. Just based on his merits, of the character, kayfabe, has he done enough accomplishment-wise to get in on merit?
How many times has he held the belt? I'm a little.
So he's held the world belt 3 times. Once was for 5 minutes and 15 seconds, though. He lost it on the Money in the Bank cash-in. He's been the U.S. title holder, the tag title holder, 3 headline WrestleManias. He's won a Royal Rumble, has been in the final 3 or 4 in 2 or 3 others. The Shield, I mean, one of the most amazing factions of all time. Short-lived, but did what they did. Has he done enough?
I mean, him beating The Undertaker would be sort of like his clip, don't you think?
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, it's just personal to me that I don't. But I guess if Teddy Long goes in, I guess then he goes in.
I can't think of a better argument than that. Exactly. All right, awesome. Greg Monteith, thanks so much, man, for coming in and giving us a counterbalance to the Roman talk here every week.
Thanks, buddy. And you just made the list.
There you go. Good bring back, Betsy.
Thanks for having me on. It's really fun listening. It's fun to be part of the show.
Before you do go, Greg, let people know where they can find you or your work. Plug whatever you feel like plugging, man.
Just find me on Instagram at Greg Monteith. Greg has 2 G's at the end, and you can find it in the show notes, I'm sure.
We will have it there, 100%. Awesome, Greg. Thanks so much, man, and we'll get you on the Roman side at some point down the road.
I'll see you at SummerSlam.
Yeah, we'll catch you there for the house burning down. Greg Monteith, thanks a lot.
Thanks, Greg.
So, time for the debrief now. I get talking smack, whatever that version is for us here on Believe That. Believe Smack, maybe. So, Betsy and Mike here with you. We just had Greg Monteith. Betsy, thanks so much for hooking it up and bringing him on. What'd you think? What were some takeaways from our chat with an anti-Romanist?
It's nice to have the opposite opinion, and it's nice to be able to have the discussion and be like, why do you feel the way that you feel? Knowing how much of a fan he was back in the day and who he was a fan of, I feel like it sort of stands to reason why he doesn't particularly care for Roman. And, some of it's not off base, but also the stuff that he's talking about that he doesn't care for is, again, can sort of be blanketed across the roster. But when you have somebody who's being pushed, you don't want them to fall into the category of 3/4 of the roster. You want them to be special. You want to see why they're being pushed the way they're being pushed. And so I enjoyed it. What about you?
Yes, Sam, and it's always good to see other perspectives. And again, I'm not the kind of I don't delusionize myself that Roman is this perfect wrestler who can do no wrong. I get the complaints against him. Usually I'm the one lobbying them on this show against you. But yeah, so it's good to know. Yeah, right? Betsy, the big one. It's interesting to me, though, hearing him say how he doesn't care about anything Roman's doing. That was interesting to me because even when Roman's doing poorly, I'm still captivated. Even if he's going down in a blaze of glory, a ball of fire, just a dumpster fire of whatever, I'm still caring. So that was interesting to me that he gets a bit apathetic about Roman, but that's a problem for a lot of people. So that's something that Vince and company will have to fix. All right, we don't want to go on too much longer, Betsy, but we do got to talk about Raw this week. Roman, again, not there, but we got a couple of video packages. One, basically Roman's resume tape that they put together.
So good.
And then two, the promo package we're going to see at Payback, basically, for this feud. Quick takeaways from those two. What do you think?
Oh, I mean, I was watching the promo of like sort of his resume, you know, his career and whatnot, and like literally, I was like, I mean, look at it, it's great, it's exciting. Like, how can anybody dislike that?
It made him. I wrote in my notes. This package makes him look like the greatest wrestler of all time. Like it was all his strengths, none of his weaknesses, and it looked fantastic.
Oh, it's so exciting! All of those things. But then again, like when WWE knows how to put together a highlight reel. They know how to put together a promo package. Like their editors and the people who grab the moves that they grab to put into these packages know their stuff. Their promos are exciting.
It was great, and I give them credit for the package for the lead up to the match on Sunday for Payback, because watching that, like we've been watching this live and we've asked, how does this fit in with, Undertaker was thrown in there, Braun and Brock thrown in there randomly, but when you watch that video package, it actually looks like it makes sense. If you don't know anything else, it looks like, Braun thinks that Roman got lucky because he tried a top rope headbutt or something, and that's what cost him the match when Roman beat him at Fastlane. Now I got the thing watching that Braun's like, that was a lucky break. I know better now. I'm the better wrestler, and we're getting our rematch. That made this feud make sense to me.
But then he lost to Kalisto in the dumpster match. Like legit, like lost and was like standing in the dumpster, like what just happened? So then for me, I was like, why would you do that? And I mean, granted, he like ran, roughshod over Kalisto later, but like. And so in that way, it sort of like purports the same thing. But like, is that what they're going to do for Braun now? Is that he's like so crazed that then he loses, Roman got lucky with a headbutt in the match. Oh, Kalisto got lucky because I was thinking like, now you've had these two instances where I'm like, so you're not really as good as you say you are because Kalisto just beat you.
Yeah, if you were that
it's
good,
Kalisto.
you'd be able to avoid those flukes. Yeah, it was him.
Right.
Yeah.
And like,
I wasn't that mad at that because it's such a gimmicky match to begin with, a dumpster match. You can slip and fall and lose. You can lose your balance and fall in there and lose, like whatever. So I think if you're going to have him, because you can't have him win all the time, right? Or else he becomes this unbeatable force. So this is a good way to say like, hey, this little guy got lucky basically. It was a fluky match. If it was just a standard 1, 2, 3 kind of pinfall or submission match, no way Braun would lose. And then he gets his chance to be the monster throwing the dumpster off the ramp and whatever. So I get it. I was fine with that. I was cool with Braun losing that way just because it still protects him in my mind. But I see where you're coming from.
Yeah.
But the one bad thing, it sets Roman up as this underdog babyface again. That promo package was basically just him getting beat up for 2 minutes. And then now it's time for our conquering hero to make his big return on Sunday, which is just back to square one.
Yep, agreed.
Yeah.
Unfortunate.
I also, what do you think about them intertwining his brother's death, his real life brother's death last week? Was that in the Hulu version that you saw?
I don't think so. Not that I remembered.
So basically, there's an article on WWE.com this week, an interview, quote unquote, with Roman Reigns, and they're talking to him about the craziness of these past 2 weeks. And they put excerpts of that up on the screen, him talking about everything he's been going through inside and outside the ring. This doesn't sound familiar to you?
No.
All right. Well,
no, they must have cut that out. I'll have to go check that out.
And probably because the online reception was not good, because it's super awkward. So it's an article that's talking about how it's the toughest 2 weeks of Roman's life because professionally, Braun Strowman destroyed him last week, beat him up, injured him, is on his mind for Payback. But also because personally, he's dealing with the death of his brother, Matt, his real life brother, on the outside. And it was just it's so weird, almost like very exploitative, and it felt very awkward watching that. And I want to read you, let's see, an excerpt here just to see what your thoughts on it are.
Well, and while you're searching for that excerpt, like something that you just mentioned about how they're, pushing him back to be the babyface for this payback thing, like this article does exactly that too.
Right.
Where they're trying to gain sympathy for it, like trying to gain sympathy for him to get more people to like him because people aren't on board.
Right, because who's gonna boo a guy whose brother just died? And that's it. But it just feels so exploitative to me. Like I want him to take a shower. All right, so here's a representative excerpt. So, this is Roman answering a question. This is in print. I'm going to be reading this here. Physically, I'm as beat up as I am emotionally. This has been 2 of the roughest weeks of my professional career and life. I've never experienced a loss this close since it's my only blood brother, but I've also never experienced a beatdown like Braun Strowman gave me. Like, putting those two together, that just feels so terrible to me.
Yeah, equate it to your match with The Undertaker. Don't equate it to your match with Braun Strowman. And yeah, I wonder if they wanted him to say something along those lines that like, well, if you're going to do this interview, like promote the match. No, I agree with you. It feels exploitative and I want to take a shower.
Yeah, that was bad. All right. So all that considered, how many Superman punches are you giving Roman this week? He wasn't on TV, but we got 2 packages, that weird sort of kayfabe, sort of shoot article. You got anything?
God, I almost don't want to rate it because, I don't think he should be rated on his video packages, and But I don't want to give him a 0 because he wasn't on the show, but he wasn't on the show. So, I'll give him a 3.
Yeah, I'm at a 2 this week. I gave him incomplete last week because they didn't try and do anything. He just wasn't there. But this week they're trying to make him this underdog babyface again, and the misstep with the article with his brother's death just rubbed me the wrong way. So, and
it's not grading the man but grading the character, and quite frankly grading WWE for the choices they're making with his character, which they're just unfortunate.
Yeah, pretty lame. All right, any Samoan drop? Anything you want to talk about outside of Roman?
I really enjoyed Alexa Bliss on the microphone. She's quickly becoming one of my faves, and one of the reasons why is because she might be my favorite female on the mic right now, because there's just an ease and a confidence from her that happens where you don't feel like her wheels are turning while she's interacting with people. Like she's not trying to think of the next thing to say, and it just comes, and it's exactly what you want from her, and so catty and so arrogant, and it's great. It's just really great.
5 Feet of Fury. No, she's very much the anti-Roman. She sounds like she's going off bullet points or extemporaneously instead of something prepared.
Yeah.
The Alexa Bliss is great. Say what? When the crowd was doing the what chants, that was so good. I love that.
Exactly.
My only thing, and I'll keep this very brief. Seth Rollins, Samoa Joe, and Finn Balor being criminally underused right now. Those are 3 top-level main event guys, and you're just throwing them in this mid-card malaise. I don't like it one single bit.
Neither do I. I agree with that.
So I'm going to end it at that. I just got my new Seth Rollins t-shirt in the mail this week. I was going to wear it today, but I forgot.
I know.
It's just upsetting
I loved it. And I loved the text video that you sent me of opening it with his Prince music.
My shirt unveiling. Yeah, it was the best. Oh, so good. So do something better with them, guys. Do something better with a lot of the wrestlers, because a lot of them are floundering right now in this post-WrestleMania time. Just a rough episode of Raw this week.
Indeed.
All right, Betsy. Well, that's going to do it for us this week. Next week, it is Payback this Sunday, and then Raw, obviously, the night after that. Show news, I'm heading off to Asia on Tuesday. So we're going to have to wait and see what our plan is exactly for those of you getting used to us every week. If we can record something ahead of time, or if I have time before I leave with Betsy and your schedule, we'll figure it out.
Yep. So
stay tuned to that, folks. Meanwhile, Betsy, let people know where they can find you and everything else you got going on in life outside of the squared circle.
Facebook, Betsy Struxness, and on Instagram and Twitter, I'm at BE_Strux, STRUX. It's pretty much what I got going on, is a whole lot of this, some homeowning, some healing from an injury, walking the dog. in the
Booking
ring.
the territory. I love it. A lot happening. I'm at Mike Janela everywhere. That's Janela. Make sure to grab the show wherever you choose. Our YouTube experiment may be ending soon. We're not sure if putting videos up all the time of just us talking heads is really what the internet needs more of, but we're definitely audio available on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, SoundCloud. Review us and rate us, even if you hate us. That's what we want you guys to do. So we appreciate it. And I guess we'll be talking next week after Payback, Betsy. Looking forward to it.
Right. Me too.
All right. Thanks to you guys all for listening. Thanks again to Greg Monteith for coming on the show this week. And make sure to spread the word and get this podcast to all your wrestling-loving friends, because we're not a good podcast. We're not a bad podcast. Betsy, we are just
the podcast.
Believe that. See ya.